Hi friends! Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a pretty big for me mid-year planner update. And that is that I'm moving over from planning in my Hobonichi Cousin and my Traveler's Notebook over to my Hobonichi Original A6 size with a Hobonichi weekly supplement. And I'll be doing this over the next month or so as an experiment to give myself a chance to see what it would be like to use this planning system exclusively. And then I'll do a check-in in a month or so to determine next steps. So in this video, I'll go over a bit of a background as to what's going on, why and how I'm making this switch now. And I'll also share some reflection questions that I've been thinking about and what I'm hoping to accomplish with this little experiment, what I'll be thinking about over the next month or so while I give this planning system a real chance, and what I'll be thinking about after this experiment is done. This will be a chatty video, and I invite you to settle in with a coffee, tea, or your favorite beverage of choice. I am working on a tea over here with a splash of brown sugar oat creamer, and feel free to grab an activity or a journal or a planner to keep you company while we hang out and chat about my planner updates. Before we get into the planner chat, I had one quick update that I wanted to share with you. The other day, I was scrolling on Facebook Marketplace and I came across somebody selling a bottle of Hana Ikata. I love Pilot Iroshizuku inks. I currently own 2 bottles, so this will be my 3rd full bottle. It is a little bit used, but it's a beautiful pink. My thought with this is it's potentially going to be a little too light to write with. So something that I've been doing and having a lot of fun with lately is putting light colored inks in my broad nibbed Kaweco Sport. And I've been using light colored inks kind of like a highlighter. So if it doesn't end up writing too well, I'm going to use it as a highlighter or an underline. So I'm really excited to add this to my ink bottle collection. And when I went to pick up this bottle, the person ended up giving me a bunch of samples that she didn't want anymore. So I'm really excited to try these out. This one is called Diamine Shimmer Caramel Sparkle. This one is Pilot Iroshizuku Kujaku, Noodler's 54th Massachusetts, but I think it's already dried out, honestly, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get that into a pen. This one is Diamine Cocoa Shimmer, J. Urbain Diabolo Mint, and Pilot Iroshizuku Fuyu Gaki. So let me know if you have tried any of these inks. I'm very excited to try them out. In case you're new here, I wanted to give you a bit of context as to where we're starting off with. So currently my planning system is that I use my Hobonichi Cousin for planning out my week. So I use the weekly layouts where I time block all of the meetings that I know that I have coming up, and I use that to keep me organized, to make sure that I don't miss any meetings, that kind of thing. I use the daily pages as a notebook, and what I really like about the daily pages being structured in that way is I use the yearly view at the beginning as a way to index my notes. So in the future, if I want to find a note on something, I know that I can always reference my index. When it comes to planning, I would say most of that happens in the weekly views, and that is one of the reasons why I love the Cousin so much. When it comes to my Traveler's Notebook, I use a blank insert as a to-do list. It works really well as a getting things done productivity tool. This 2-book system, as well as it works, the main reason why I was tempted to make this change is because I'm looking for something that's a little more portable. And so this is something that fits in my purse. this is something that fits in my purse, but these two things together do not travel very well. So, why now? Well, the reason why is because I have actually finished my blank insert. I started this insert mid-July of last year. So it's actually kind of perfect timing that we are in mid-July right now and I've completed this insert. And just to give you a sense of how it has fluffed up, this is the same insert that I use, but this one is blank. And you can see it's fluffed up quite a bit, but not to the point where it's unreasonable. So since I had finished insert and I needed to switch it out anyway, I thought this was the perfect time to think about doing an experiment to seeing if this planner system could actually work for me. I think I'll start off by sharing some considerations with this month-ish experiment that I'm going to do. So first, I didn't want to have to buy anything new for this experiment. Because I already had these, I figured I might as well repurpose at least this A6 and try it out. The other consideration is I do have an emotional attachment to my traveler's notebook, and while that seems like a silly thing to acknowledge, I think it's important to, because for me, I know that if I don't incorporate some kind of regular use of my traveler's notebook next year, whether that's for planning or tracking or something creative, I know I'm going to miss it. And using this insert for the last 3 years has become such a comfort for me. I don't share the contents of this online because I don't censor anything. It does contain confidential information, and it's a really wonderful place for me to just get things done. And I recognize that you can use any notebook that you want to get things done, but there was something about this size that really worked well for me. While this has done wonders for my productivity, there were reasons why I started using the Hobonichi system in the first place. This kind of has like a single use, which is getting things done, but the Hobonichi gives me that chronological aid for me to remember all the things that happened in that year, good and bad. So I am a little unsure of letting go of this blank insert in a traveler's notebook, but at the same time, I'm also unsure if I would be satisfied with using the traveler's notebook on its own as a planner, because the multiple book system has typically not worked for me. And in here, even, I really only had this blank notebook. The other insert is a sticker release paper, and then the other insert is a folder that I use to house my health and wellness tracker. Another major consideration that I had is I wanted to think about why I have stopped using planners and notebooks in the past. And looking back, one of the things that I know doesn't work for me is when something gets too thick to write on. So I really liked my main planners to be as lean as possible. The Hobonichi Cousin is already quite a thick book, and apart from a few stickers here and there in my weekly pages, the rest of this book is pretty much pen only. And that is one thing that I cannot say the same for with my A6, because I started this year off using this as a fun journal where I've been playing around with ink swatches and things like that. So this book is already kind of fluffy, and I love fluffy books. I think they're so cool and they show like a lot of character and history. But for a book that I mainly want to be writing in, I know that if the writing experience stops being pleasant, then I'm more likely to drop out of it. I've also learned over the years that horizontal weekly layouts don't work for me. So as much as I really love the Hobonichi weeks, just because it's so slim, and I love the fact that you can put this little book in your purse, the weekly layouts just don't work for me as a place for me to write down things that I need to do. My to-do lists are always way too long, and I've always found it difficult to fit them in to this space like this. So part of the reason why the Traveler's Notebook works so well is because I wasn't constrained by how small these were. So if one day needed more things, I could have more space. And this works really well as like a single subject kind of book. If I don't have a space for me to be able to put my meetings down on that vertical layout, which I only discovered last year works really well for me, it doesn't really offer me any more value than a simple to-do list. And for me right now in my life, I need that space to be able to have things showing in that way. And I also learned that I need some structure. So if I have to do too much to set up my week before I can start planning in it, then I know eventually I'm going to abandon it. So bullet journaling was something that I had so much motivation to do at the time because it was creative and I was craving some creativity in my life. I was just working all the time and I really needed like a creative outlet. So bullet journaling at the time fulfilled that need for me to an extent, but it didn't fulfill my actual planning needs. And because eventually I didn't have time to do elaborate setups, I just found that even the most simple setup was enough to deter me, and eventually I abandoned it. And then trying to decorate my spreads brings out the perfectionist in me. So something that I need to be really honest with myself on is when it comes to planners, I follow a lot of creators who have the most beautiful, aesthetically pleasing spreads, and I am going to continue following them because I just love looking at it and learning from it. But I know for me, if I try to make that my priority, then I'm going to abandon it. And from a planning perspective, I don't think I have it in me to do that. From a memory keeping perspective, that's a different story. But for a planning perspective, I need to minimize that because it'll bring out the overthinker in me and I will begin to associate planning with stress. So those are just some things that I needed to keep in mind when I was thinking about what I wanted about making this move. I'll do a really quick flip through of how things have been going. So I officially moved in to this system a few days ago. It really hasn't been that long. So in my last video, I shared some example spreads where I played around with what it might look like. And I got this really great suggestion because my complaint with moving down into the size, because it's so much smaller than the Cousin, is that in the Cousin you get 2 boxes for every hour, and a lot of my meetings are half an hour or 1 hour long. And so I played around with trying to cut the boxes down. So if a meeting started at 5:30, I would have it like halfway down the box. It wasn't perfect and it was a little finicky. So someone suggested that I simply renumber the timing here, which I thought was brilliant because I really don't have anything that I personally need to track between 9 o'clock and 5 in the morning. So it was giving me more space to decorate and put stickers, but it honestly wasn't really getting much use. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me to try that, but I did that, and it has been such an amazing change for me. So I take my platinum carbon black and I start numbering where the 6 a.m. was. I put 9 a.m. and then I allocate 2 boxes for every hour. So basically 1 box represents half an hour. And that was a game changer for me. So to the person who shared this suggestion, thank you so much. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to renumber them, but it was such a great suggestion. I do wonder if I'll get annoyed about having to renumber this every week, but it doesn't take that long. And the other thing that I did is I wrote down the days of the week, because I think the weekly supplement only comes in Japanese. And so I wrote this out in platinum carbon black, and then I used my Kaweco Brass Sport, the broad nib, and I just colored them in, which I think, as I mentioned earlier, was such a fun way to use this ink, because on its own, it doesn't look too bad here, but in other cases, it was a little too light sometimes to be legible. And so I thought this is a really fun way to use up some of my lighter ink colors. And another thing that I did, you can still see some of the old time blocks here. So I saw that Corey on paper used a Posca marker to erase some of her lines out in one of her videos. And I already had one of these lying around and I never use it. So I tried it out and I think it works great. It's one more thing that I would have to do to set this up. I don't know if that will get annoying after a while to reset the timelines, but I don't think it's too bad. So it makes a difference, because I find it a little bit distracting when I see the old numbers here, but when I actually white them out, it works out really well. This is this week and I'm really liking it a lot. So not as much room to decorate, but I think that's a good thing, because I don't really want to have pressure to do too much decoration. And it just keeps me organized with all the meetings that I have coming up. And it's so small that this could fit in my purse. It can fit in the back of my A6 cover. And it also allows me to have this open on my desk and not take up a lot of space. I'm really excited about this now. I wasn't sure at first, but now I'm excited about the prospect of using this. Okay, so I'll go through the A6. It honestly hasn't changed at all since that last video that I did. Yeah, at the beginning of the year, I was using this kind of like as a fun art journal. And it's not that I don't like this, but I just had been finding it difficult to keep up with it. So I was starting to get a lot of blank pages anyway. I played around with a couple of different ways to like lay out the space, but it's pretty much all the same. First of all, I started out with a little curly inked. I think it's a really fun month where I've started to integrate some brighter colors, and I'll show you the last time I did one of these was here, when I noticed that I had a lot of darker colors. So I've introduced a couple more here. This is that Magnolia Mirage that I was talking about. It's a little bit hard to write with, but really, really fun to highlight with. And then on my daily pages, I tried making little boxes that I could cross off for my meetings, and I immediately decided that I did not like that. At the start of the day, I note down meetings, and I write down all the meetings that I have for that day that are on schedule. And then I just write down my to-do list here. So some days they're longer, some days they're shorter. And on the side here, I typically just keep it blank so that I have a space to take really quick notes. So for example, I had to call our pet insurance company, and so I used this space to write down notes from that call. Last week I did that bathroom makeover video, and so I had a couple of to-do lists that I needed to get done to complete the video. These were completely blank, so I used this for a little bit of like, what did I do today? Just as an additional place to write that kind of stuff down. And I've also been using more of my like thin transfer stickers here, because this side of the book is already a little bit annoying to write on. So I'm trying to minimize the bulk if I were to continue using this. Pretty much how things have been going so far. And I'm really loving it. I know that I benefit from doing a to-do list every day. So chances of me opening this up and using it are pretty high because I have a history of using my traveler's notebook in that way. And I also have a running list on the side here where I can write down some reminders. So for example, we have a vet appointment that I booked last week for this week, and I was able to use this side space to write it down so that I could remember to put it in when I was actually like setting up this page. So that's basically what I'm doing so far. Before I make any decisions or final judgments, I'm going to give myself at least a month. As for the cousin, I'm not going to abandon it. I'm going to continue using the daily pages to take notes. Yeah, if you have any suggestions on how I could use this weekly view, if I do eventually permanently move into this weekly supplement, let me know. Because, yeah, I've never really explored using this weekly page for anything other than blocking off meetings that I have. So I would like to, at least for the rest of this year, give myself an opportunity to see if there are like other ways that I could use this space. Because heading into 2025, if the only thing I'm using this size notebook for is to take notes, then I might switch over to a blank notebook. But I do really like having this built-in structure so much. Like I do really like having the space to take notes, but also the ability to have like a built-in index. And I think I'm probably one of the very rare few who actually likes reading these quotes. They're just so quirky and different. Quotes that you might get from other planners that I've had. They make me contemplate, and I do actually really like reading these. So part of the reason why I'm so hesitant to switch over to another system altogether is because number one, I have an emotional attachment. And number two, like there's a lot of quirky things, personality, and this feeling of being taken care of. So I know the paper having changed over is a contentious topic, and it hasn't been for everybody. And I also feel like it's lost a little bit of its appeal because the writing experience isn't quite the same. But there's still so much about this system that I love that I am feeling unsure about leaving altogether. So at the end of the day, if I'm using a cousin, I'm probably using another notebook because I like having my weekly view open on my desk. So flipping between the weekly view and my daily pages, I think is going to get kind of tiring on a daily basis. So this is going to be great for having my to-do list open all the time and having my schedule open all the time. And the cousin, if I don't end up using it for planning, I might consider using it as more of an archive, and that is something that I've been really inspired by Lindsay Scribbles about. So she has been using her cousin as an archive, and I must admit there's something about like a big book that houses your entire year that really motivates me and gets me excited. I'm going to close things off with some reflection questions that I will be keeping in mind throughout this experiment. When I was making the decision to switch over to the system and give it a real chance, some of the things that I was reflecting on were, what are my current needs and goals? And that led me to determining that this is the system that I want to try out for now. So my needs are that I need a weekly view where I can see my calendar. I need a place to write down my to-do list so that I can constantly reference it and remind myself to get things done. I need it to be in a separate space so I can have both open on my desk so I can do that cross-referencing. I want it to be portable, so something that I can put into my purse and travel with when I need to, so that I can have everything in one place. So instead of having some stuff in my cousin and then something in my purse when I'm going away, I can just have it all in this one place when it comes to planning, not memory keeping. And during the experiment, some of the things I'll be thinking about are how easy is it to get set up for my day or my week? And then how quickly can I jump into planning? So, if after this experiment I decide that writing down the days of the week, writing down the numbers, and then whiting out the numbers that I don't want to see starts to feel cumbersome when I didn't have to do any of that in the cousin, then that is something to seriously consider, because too much setup is just going to get annoying for me and I'm not going to stick with it. Another question I have is, how do I feel throughout this? I mentioned emotional attachments, and I have a pretty big emotional attachment to the cousin because I really fell in love with how powerful it was. It introduced me to the power of the vertical weekly, which doesn't work for everybody, but works really well for me. I also have quite a strong attachment to my traveler's notebook. So for me to completely walk away from two systems that worked so well for me might make me miss them. And if I miss them too much, then I might abandon this. So I don't necessarily want to optimize. Like, I also want to optimize for joy in addition to practicality and productivity. I'll be thinking about any unforeseen challenges with this new system that I didn't think about. So I've tested it out a few times, but the more time I spend in the system, the more things will come out for me, and either there'll be positive revelations or maybe some negative ones that I don't even know about right now. And likewise, what are some unexpected benefits of this? And then in terms of after a month or so, I'll be reflecting on what happened, how consistent was I, how easy did it feel to be consistent, how do I feel about squeezing in my to-do list here, and am I actually making use of the space? Do I really need it or not? How do I feel with the system? Do I miss my old one? Finally, what do I want to do next? So one outcome could be that I want to continue with this approach and just officially move into the system for the rest of the year and then carry it over to 2025. Another could be that I want to try a completely different experiment. So maybe I try going all in on my cousin and using the weekly as I was, and then the dailies. And then there's also using this as my to-do list, and then this for taking notes and maybe doing some additional reflections. And then of course, maybe another experiment is trying out the traveler's notebook, and maybe I could use some of my existing blank inserts and I could try testing out how I would feel about going back into a multi-book system where I've got maybe one insert that's the vertical weekly and then one insert that is my daily to-do list. And maybe I can play around with different ways of housing them in a traveler's notebook so that I can take them out and have them, maybe lay more flat, because another issue that I have is these don't always lay flat. And then of course there's also the potential outcome where I just decide that what I had was working great, and apart from the portability issue, I want to go back to the old system, and maybe I move back into these two and I finish off the year that way. So I don't know what the outcome will be, but I do know that I'm looking forward to switching things up and shuffling things around and seeing how I feel. And let me know what you think about my new system. Let me know if you have any more suggestions for this, or any suggestions for how I could potentially repurpose my cousin if I do stop using the weeklies for planning. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and let me know how you're feeling at this midpoint of the year. Are you staying strong with your system? Are you changing things up? And if so, what are you in right now? Whether it's the system you started the year off with, or if you're in something else, I would love to hear it. Otherwise, If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around and making it to the end of the video. I appreciate you all so, so much. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye!